25-year-old Guy in the dark tracksuit will defend his light heavyweight title against UK boxer Roy Skeldon, who is number 3 on the British rankings. Guy's father and trainer Sess says his boy will be quicker and smarter than his older opponent.
Well, Guy will be the hit and run kind of gentleman Jim Corbett stuff. You know, this is what Guy does. He always fights from behind a very, very good tight defence, and he's a good mover. He uses the ring a lot, you know, and I think he'll be depending on doing everything from behind his left hand.
Guy's younger brother Troy will clash with Judas Colotti, who has won 14 of his last 15 fights by knockout. Troy says despite Colotti's big punching ability, he will step into the ring with no set plan.
We don't know a lot about him, but we're just going to go in there and, you know, take a couple of rounds to sort him out, and I'll see what he's got, and after the couple of rounds, well, then I'll go to work, and I'm sure probably by the end of the, you know, middle rounds, 5th, 6th, 7th round, I'll start to do my best work.
Troy will also use the fight as a major warm-up at a crack at the IBF light middleweight title against Italian Gianfranco Rossi later this year.
Well, mate, over the last 2 years, you know, 18 months, I've had 4 world title fights lined up, and each time the champions fought somebody else and subsequently been beaten. So, you know, now it's my turn. I've got to get over this one, and the world title's been set for October, November, so the champion can't get out of it now. The IBF president, Robert Lee, has stated that he has to fight me, so, you know, I just got to get over this one first.
In Northern New South Wales Soccer Federation First Division, the major semi-finals are being played, and at Austral Park on Sunday, Adamstown will clash with West Wallsend in the first grade at 2:30. Newcastle Australs are away this weekend to Avala, that match also on Sunday. Sinbads will have the Knights players Tony Butterfield and Troy Clark in their corner tomorrow when they clash with the Delaney Rollers in the Newcastle Netball Grand Final at National Park. The Rollers have won the title for the past 2 years, but will be pressed all the way by the physical Sinbads. Preliminary final day at the number 1 sports ground tomorrow for the Newcastle Australian Football League, and Nelson Bay meet Wallsend, with the winner going through to meet Warners Bay in next weekend's grand final. The Newcastle Men's Hockey Association begin their finals tomorrow when North and University do battle in the major semi-final, and on Sunday South and West clash in the elimination final. And the Charlestown and Lambton bowling clubs will host the City versus Country Bowls Classic, with the seniors at Charlestown and the juniors at Lambton. 6 Australian representatives and 16 state reps will take part in the 2-day carnival. Top sprinter High Regard and the champion mare Research will also run boldly. So your trifecta should read Riverina Charm to beat High Regard and Research. For your daily double at Randwick tomorrow, try A Little Kiss in the first leg and Temple Front in the second leg. The Memsey Stakes will hold the spotlight at Caulfield tomorrow, and the New Zealander Our Westminster should win again. The trifecta is the Menzies, and Gary Harley suggests 1, 4 and 3, Our Westminster to beat Kairu Lad and My Steely Dan, while for the daily double, try Fighting Man in the first leg and Dyra in the second. The Newcastle Jockey Club, in conjunction with the Newcastle Knights, will conduct an 8-race meeting at Broadmeadow tomorrow, and Lee Morn reckons top weight King Knight is the special in the Cup, which is race 7. In the trifecta race, Gary likes Barrabalee to beat Kiwi Kong and Rocket Lad, and for the daily double, Barrabalee and Frioka. Trotting at Cessnock on Saturday night and Salute the Stars with Caesar's Son should take out the legs of the daily double, while for the trifecta, Rocket Jason to beat Dicey Dealer and All Choice.
Shortly before 10 last night, a neighbour of the murdered greyhound trainer John Brown called police saying she believed she'd heard shots and shouting at the Little Vogue property. When police arrived at the scene, the house was in darkness and no one was answering the telephone. Not knowing what they might encounter, and with the shotgun murder of just a week before in mind, police opted to play safe and kept the house under observation until specially trained SWAS officers could be brought in. After a careful search of the unoccupied house and the property, the all clear was given at about 11:30 p.m. The noises heard remain unexplained. They could have been shots fired by pig hunters in the nearby swamp or a car backfiring.
Late yesterday, Kevin Frederick Shaw walked into the Gosford Police Station and surrendered to officers from the Regional North Drug Unit. Police allege Mr Shaw is the major operator of a large-scale amphetamine ring working throughout the state. Police became suspicious of Mr Shaw after the seizure of nearly 9 kilos of pure-grade amphetamine crystal worth $2.4 million on the street during a raid on a Mortdale address in June this year. Senior Constable Gary Lambert says Mr Shaw was aware the police had a warrant out for him and decided to surrender.
Kevin Frederick Shaw yesterday surrendered himself to police at Gosford Police Station and has since been charged with supply and possess a prohibited drug, that being amphetamine, and the possession of an unlicensed pistol, and also an outstanding warrant was in existence for his arrest. He was charged with that. He went before Gosford Local Court yesterday and will reappear at Cogra Local Court next Monday.
Since Mr Shaw's arrest late yesterday, police raided his Nambucca Heads residence and expect to lay a number of further charges relating to drug and firearm offences. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
Over the last few years, the face of Newcastle has undergone some dramatic changes. Many of the city's newest developments have become landmarks as a result of their innovative design features. Features that have now become the trademark of two of the city's most progressive architectural firms, Brian Suiters Architects and Planners and Architect Snell. This afternoon, those two companies announced they are to pool their immense resources to form Suiters Architects Snell, Australia's largest regional design firm.
There's a limit to what you can do as a small regional practice, and basically the Architect Snell and Suiters Architects were regional practices. Now we see ourselves going up to the next scale, being a national or a state practice, so certainly there's greater opportunities.
Over the last 10 years, the two firms have won 42 awards for design and have been responsible for such projects as Queen's Wharf, the work of architect Snell, and the Regional Museum and East End Housing Department development by Brian Suiters. But while both have been award winners, few can deny the mix of the two companies' styles has been vastly different, and finding common ground will take a bit of adjustment.
I think that combination of conservatism, in inverted commas, and that racy flair that Kevin's obviously got, I think those two things coming together will be really great.
The new firm will offer the talents of more than 40 architects and will expand its services statewide through a new combined Sydney office.
Almost 200 Newcastle teachers met this afternoon to discuss the progress of salary negotiations with the state government. The report from the Federation wasn't encouraging. State Deputy President Ray Kavanagh says the government is using delaying tactics.
Teachers are underpaid. Everybody recognises that, including the Minister. It's a national problem, and then all the teacher unions are seeking to address it. We've got some difficulties in terms of what's being demanded of us. It's being suggested to teachers that in order to get more pay they're going to have to teach more kids or more periods, and that's not acceptable.
Mr Kavanagh will visit many of almost 70 centres holding meetings this week. He says the meetings support a statewide stop work planned next Tuesday. Teachers will use a video link-up for the first time on that day for a meeting which is expected to last no more than 1.5 hours from 9 a.m. Teachers will then return to work. However, Mr Kavanagh suggests parents contact schools before Tuesday to ensure they understand the arrangements. The meeting is likely to endorse another long-running wage campaign, but Mr Kavanagh says HSC students needn't fear for their exams or studies.
We've vowed for some years now that we will not interfere with the running of the HSC, and we'll maintain that.
The Outback Surfboat Classic will leave Brewarrina on September 28 and head 200 kilometres downstream toward Bourke along the Barwon River. The Nobbys team are now in their final preparations for the event. It will have them rowing just on 70 kilometres a day to complete the race in a competitive time. Team captain Darren Cox says besides physical hardships like blisters and sunburn, the crews will encounter plenty of nature's own hazards.
Well, the river itself is very unpredictable. At the moment there's a fair bit of water in it, but when the race is on we don't know. We've got to be careful in exiting the boats and everything, because you could jump out and could go into 12 foot of water, or you could jump out and go onto a mud bar which is only 2 foot under the water or something. So it could be that we end up high and dry in the middle of the river.
The Nobbys squad is made up of 20 men aged between 19 and 49 and keen to do well against 31 clubs from Queensland, Sydney, Victoria and New Zealand. The winners will take out a new, fully equipped surfboat worth an estimated $15,000. However, entry fees raised from the race will go towards a number of charities, including the Flying Doctor Service, Brewarrina District Hospital and the Australian Surf Life Saving Association. The Nobbys team is sponsored by the Banana Growers Association and are confident their banana boat will do well.
Oh, I think we're pretty good. We'll be pretty good for the first day anyhow. After that, well, we'll see just how the physical strain tells on the fellas.
Three species of territorial fish, the red mowong, the blue groper and cockies, were caught and analysed for the presence of 12 organochloride pesticide substances plus trace metals. To enable a control sample for comparison, other fish were also taken from Catherine Hill Bay. They showed only small amounts, but the fish off Burwood exceeded on average by 5 times the residue limit for chlordane set by the National Health and Medical Research Council. Environment Minister Tim Moore says that while the level is cause for concern, he's not ringing alarm bells.
There's a small problem up here, nowhere as bad as we've got in Sydney, and what we're aiming to do here are two things. The first is to get the cooperation of the pest control industry to stop commercial applications of pesticides going down the sewerage system, and the second thing is over the next 7 or 8 weekends there'll be a hand-in campaign throughout the Lower Hunter and the Central Coast where people can clean out their garden sheds, their kitchen cupboard, their laundry cupboard, give the stuff in through the local collection points, and we will dispose of it safely, no questions asked, no penalties.
Chlordane is used in the main to control termites and is now only available to registered pest controllers, and that industry is now strictly controlled.
Our industry has been very responsible in the past. It's natural that there will be some residues in fish off Burwood Beach because this is a concentration of all the sewers, or most of the sewers over Newcastle.
The Water Board has sampled sewage downstream from several pest control firms and is due to release the results of those tests soon. It will also re-examine the Burwood Beach chlordane level in a year or so to monitor any change.
The Newcastle Falcons pulled off a major upset last weekend by beating the Adelaide 36ers in one of the most exciting games seen at the stadium for many years. Tomorrow night they're up against a team arguably tougher than the 36ers, the Sydney Kings. Under the astute guidance of former Falcons mentor Bob Turner, the Kings are currently third on the National Basketball League ladder, a position they are keen to consolidate. Along with Turner, sharpshooter Ian Davies makes a return, and many fans will remember the dual Olympian's role with the Falcons. Also, Ian Moose Rebilliard, one of the all-time great Falcons players, will make his presence felt, this time with the opposition, but he is eagerly awaiting the reception from the fans.
Hopefully I think it'll be a good one. I gave a lot of time and spilled a lot of blood for the Newcastle fans, and I hope they remember that, and I hope they remember the efforts that Ian and Bob made to the program. So hopefully I think the reception should be fairly good.
The Moose acknowledges the danger that the Falcons pose to the Kings tomorrow night.
Well, they're a very dangerous side. They're very similar to Illawarra in as much that they've run and had their season run and gone. This game means very little to them in as much that they could say they beat Sydney Kings, who are, in the playoffs. And if we win, we're going to be probably in position 1, 2 or 3. So that's the only motivation they have to go on.
Coach Ken Cole has put his charges through an intense week of training and says that they are ready to reverse the scoreline from the first round when the Kings got home by 3 points. Sean Dennis, Michael Johnson and Jerry Everett will again play crucial roles, as will Bill Jones, who has to control Mark Ridlin and company. And what does Ian Rebellia think the result will be?
Well, we're not going up there to lose. I've never been on a court to lose, and it'll be no exception on Saturday night.
Last day on the job was a hectic one for Mr Corrigan, who flitted between packing, taking congratulatory telephone calls and attending farewell functions. But as always, he made time to sit down and discuss his point of view on matters of concern to his union members. Mr Corrigan, proud to be known as a moderate, remembers the coming of long service leave and sick leave and superannuation, but cites the steel industry plan of the early 80s as the most important time.
People must say, why you say the steel plan, there's a lot of jobs lost there, but there would have been far greater amount of jobs lost if we hadn't had the steel plan. And I think that was a breakthrough, that because of the cooperation between the unions and the companies, everybody realised and the stories came out and the full facts of what the industry is all about, and we were able to sort of create a new era of industrial relations, better industrial relations we've ever had, and that all stemmed from the steel plan. We could talk to each other and the facts were laid out on the table, and we knew, just what was going on, and so did the rank and file. And it saved the steel industry in Newcastle, because I think everybody knows Newcastle, we wouldn't have had a steel industry if that plan hadn't worked.
Len Corrigan will miss the view all the way to Highfields from his Mayfield office window, but he'll now travel, often to places he's been before, but always too busy with union matters to enjoy them.
Peter Collins sent shockwaves through medical circles early this week with a statement that Royal Newcastle's renal transplant program is underutilised and, by implication, not now viable. Those comments were contained in a press release dated September 4. Doctors and patients read Mr Collins' statement as a hint of impending closure. But a week is a long time in politics. Today, Mr Collins had no recollection of the comments which sparked such widespread concern.
I've not made any comment to that effect. I think that the area may have had some documentation which suggested that the renal unit was underused. That's not something that I've endorsed at any stage.
Altogether, this week has been one of uncertainty and upheaval for the 9-year-old transplant program. But now there's light at the end of the tunnel.
I can assure the people of the Hunter that I see every reason for retaining the renal unit here in Newcastle, and as I'm the Minister, I can say that the experts are going to have to mount an extremely convincing case to have me reconsider my position.
Closure has now been relegated to no more than a dim possibility. In fact, Mr Collins says he'd like to extend the transplant program to service a wider area of the state. Meantime, the Hunter's state-of-the-art teaching hospital at Rankin Park has finally been christened. Mr Collins named the hospital at a special ceremony. The 496-bed complex will bear the name of one of the region's most well-known forefathers.
It gives me very great pleasure to formally name this the John Hunter Hospital. Thank you very much.
"12-year-old Philippa Reeves broke loose at the Chandler pool and collected 7 gold medals and 1 silver in the championships. To cap the impressive list of medals, Philippa was also voted the most outstanding swimmer of the championships, above 1,000 other competitors. Philippa is a member of the Northern District swimming team that represents the Hunter region. It's a great start for the Hamilton South Primary School student who has been swimming competitively for only 5 years and who hopes to one day emulate the feats of Dawn Fraser.
Landcom's Hospital Hill Court subdivision is not yet complete. Little more than a year old, many of its blocks are still empty. Yet recently it was forced to call in private contractors in a bid to fix up design problems that have been labelled by residents as a complete disaster. A Port Stephens Shire Council examination found work at Hospital Hill to be grossly inadequate in 2 areas. One, failing pavements had caused breakups and holes. Council recommended that one paving block threshold and the entrance to the court be completely rebuilt. In addition to that, the very tight layout of the cul-de-sac meant that it was completely inaccessible to large vehicles, such as Council's garbage trucks. As a result, some residents had been advised to take their garbage bins all the way to the end of the street for disposal. Many of those residents are elderly, living in aged care units. Member for Port Stephens, Bob Martin, says so far they've been willing to accept that and have kept quiet. But as the problems continue to become more glaring, prospective residents are digging in their heels.
It's the people who are buying in that are waking up, that they're buying into something that's normally first rate and now discovering that it's second rate. They've got good reason to worry.
The other problem area is Benjamin Lee Drive. Little more than 3 years old, it's encountered problems with its road surface and drainage. A council report described it reflecting in a bad light on both the supervisory personnel and the contractor concerned. It also said proper repair work would be a lengthy procedure. Today we attempted to gather a comment from Landcom on what would be happening with that road. No spokespeople were available. However, Bob Martin says it's quite clear that the cost for such repair work will be considerable, and he said the taxpayers would be the ones to foot the bill.
If it were a private developer, we would expect the same thing, and you and I and everyone else would expect the developers to pay for those subdivisional costs, and it's just not right that the people have to pay after they've taken their profits. There have been some shortcutting, and we can't put up with that sort of thing.
The Wallsend unit over the past 8 years has successfully cured 85% of patients suffering cancerous melanoma, while the incidence in the disease has increased dramatically over the last 3 years. Melanoma begins often as a small skin lesion and can spread throughout the body, destroying major glands and organs, eventually leading to death. Professor Robert Burton, a member of the melanoma unit, says local results are good because people have begun to treat the lesions early.
Well, I think there's 2 reasons. Firstly, we have seen patients come much earlier as the years have worn on. In 1981, 40% of our patients came to the melanoma unit when their melanoma was more than 1.5 millimetres thick, and the thicker it is, the greater the chance it will have spread. This last year, 1988, less than 20% of patients had thick melanomas, and so we know that people are more aware of changes in moulds, and they are coming along earlier. On the other hand, I think we've tried out a number of new treatments for melanoma. It seems that some of our treatments for the more advanced melanoma have been successful.
The analysis also showed some interesting trends, with 90% of women treated recovering completely, while only 80% of men recovered fully. Professor Burton says the results also displace myths that melanoma is confined to the elderly.
In fact, it's one of the really worrying things about melanoma in Newcastle. It used to be said to be a cancer of older people, but once you're over 20 here, you have an equal chance of coming to the melanoma unit with a melanoma whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 or 70. And so we're seeing a lot more melanoma in the younger age groups. And indeed we have had some teenagers die of the disease.
25 venues in the Hunter took the live broadcast. At the Newcastle Workers Club, 200 teachers from Newcastle, Jesmond and Lambton high schools, plus associated primary schools, voted to continue industrial action if Education Minister Metherell did not support pay claims. Teachers are angry following a pay hike of up to 30% for their colleagues in Queensland. The teachers returned to work late this morning and classes should be back to normal by this afternoon.